We are Duck Hunting Fanatics, knee deep in the duck blind. If it flies, it dies. Only Duck Hunting Fanatics know what it feels like to see a brightly colored drake mallard cup its wings and soar towards your decoys. It's what we do, and it's what we love. Duck Hunting Fanatics, with boots on the ground, eyes in the skies reports. And we get it from professional duck guides all across the country. We interview them for their top tips and tricks from their years of experience from the duck hunting blind. This is Duck Hunting Fanatics, and this is Eric Wilkes.
Greetings, friends and fellow duck hunting fanatics. Eric Wilkes here again with another episode of Knee Deep in the Duck Blind. And today we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're actually going to talk about hunting whitetails, and it's one of my favorite species to hunt. And we have on the phone with us today, or on the line with us here, we have Pat Guyette of Hunt Suburbia. And so, Pat, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's awesome to be on the other end of a podcast and not have to do the hosting ability. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, today we just get to hear we're going to wrap a little bit about deer hunting. And, speaking of wrapping, I understand, prior to us kind of hitting the record button here, that in a previous life, you were actually a rapper, correct?
Oh yeah. Throughout college, I got into writing music. I guess I was more of a writer than a rapper, but released a couple of self produced albums and did a couple of live shows. And then I realized, I'm not Eminem. I'm not going to become rich and famous off of this. I might as well get into the real world and move down to Boston, quit the old band, and started working for my other job, Spartan Race, that you and I were also talking about there, doing sponsorship and media sales for those guys, and kind of hung up the old rapping a little bit, but I still write songs all the time.
That's awesome. And just so everyone knows, if you're watching this on this screen, you can see the Facebook page, Hunt Suburbia. So just real quick, because I know you're a big deer hunting guy.
Yep.
What led you to start your own podcast around deer hunting?
Well, like I said, I've worked for Spartan Race. I sold media for them and sponsors for their podcast. And I did some work with Big Woods Bucks podcast, who are just the best trackers in the country. They track whitetail deer down, find the biggest tracks in the North Maine woods on snow, and they track them down, up to 10 to 15 mile average days after a big buck. Those guys are incredible. I started selling their podcast a little bit too. And then I realized I love hunting so much. I've got all the experience on the media side. I might as well just start my own hunting podcast. And COVID came around, gave me a little bit of extra free time, no longer commuting every single day, the 3-hour commute
Right
in and out of a city, which you might not really understand being in Wisconsin. Maybe you do, but man, being in the city, those commutes suck. Gave me some free time. I decided I might as well start the podcast, and just did it. I think with anything you do, if you have an idea, you just have to pull the trigger without giving it too much thought, or you can second guess yourself. You can second guess yourself out of any great idea. So I just pulled the trigger, bought the kit, bought the websites, the distribution, all that stuff, and started doing it, and I've had a blast.
That's awesome. And I think to your point, when you come up with an idea, for those of you that are listening, because I know we have a lot of product owners as well, and some small business owners that have some really cool products that serve the outdoor space. We meet them all the time. We talk to them all the time. And, I think the thing about that is, I've read somewhere something only like 10% of the ideas that we actually act on, which means 90% of your ideas are either not acted on, or you just forget about them and don't write them down. There's any number of things, but I think if you have an idea, just act on it, so you can at least check it off your list of, it worked, it didn't work, or here's how I'm going to refine that idea and move things forward. Now, Pat, I know you're a big deer hunter, so I'm dying to kind of pick your brain on deer hunting, and you're up in the Northeast, but why deer hunting? What drove you to deer hunting?
Deer hunting is just, it's been in my family. That's what, my dad started taking me deer hunting when I was 9. He learned from his dad, my grandfather. And it's just been passed down. We've got an awesome deer camp in the middle of the woods in Vermont, surrounded by 10,000, 20,000 acres of state land. And really it was just the tradition of going out to deer camp, being around it, seeing how proud my dad was as a kid, driving, pulling in the driveway with a buck. I was always super excited about it. I got the bug real early. The hunting up there around my camp isn't, what most people would consider great hunting. It's yearling and 2.5-year-old, mostly deer. Because there's so many hunters, they don't get to be too old.
Sure.
But it's that tradition of deer camp that really got me into it. And yeah, my dad was never a turkey hunter or waterfowl or any other species. So I got that whitetail bug, and it wasn't until recently, when I moved to Massachusetts because of work, that I really started getting into scouting. I mean, scouting is the most important thing in the world, and being in Massachusetts for all this time, driving 4 hours to my deer camp to scout, was tough. But now that I'm hunting closer to home, getting the scouting in, again, replacing that commuting time that I used to have going in and out of the city all the time, and gives me an extra 2 to 3 hours a day. I try to get out for 2 to 3 hours a day and do a little bit of scouting. It's gonna pay off come deer season.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think now, even with like the evolution of trail cams and so many people, because of the pandemic, getting back to their roots, they have a little bit more time like you do to put in the work to just get out and see how the deer are moving. And I think the challenge there is the patterns do change year to year. Sometimes even their paths that they travel change year to year. It's very, very interesting, that deer behavior. What would you say to someone who's maybe just getting into the sport, or maybe they haven't even gone yet, maybe they're considering getting into it? What would be your biggest piece of advice to someone that's new to the sport?
Just get out in the woods, make mistakes, put up trail cameras. But when it comes to like what you said about the patterns changing year to year and but season by season, it's totally true. But deer behave completely differently in different parts of the country too. So you have to know your local deer herd. When I started the podcast, one of the things I kept hearing from people was, man, it's great that we've got one that's focused on Northeastern hunting, because there's not very many podcasts about the Northeast, or content. It's mostly geared, to the Midwestern hunter, and bed to ag, bed to feed patterns, and deer are kind of more patternable when you got agriculture around. So I say all that just to mean that the agriculture deer that is dependent on, and it's got all this abundant food source, with big cornfields and soybeans and all of that, they're going to act way differently than a Vermont and New Hampshire, Maine buck that has 100,000 acres of just woods, and their main food source is going to be acorn crops, or any other browse. But those deer in the big woods are extremely hard to pattern, if even it's not even really possible. They just have big loops. They roam 10 miles in a day sometimes, especially during the rut. You can't really pattern a big woods buck, but the agriculture deer you can. And then around me, I've been focusing on suburban hunting lately. I haven't noticed that you can really pattern them. They also take big loops. They wander around. They cross tons of roads. But you have kind of funnels, natural funnels created by neighborhoods and boundaries where you can't hunt. There's a lot of places you can't hunt in the suburbs, so it's easier to narrow down a place to scout. But all of that, yeah, just get out there. If you're new to hunting, get a game camera, get out into the woods, start looking for game trails. It's, it's not that hard to do. I know some people, if you're brand new, you won't even know what a game trail looks like, or a scrape or a rub, but do your research on YouTube, watch podcasts, and get out into the field and find a mentor. You got to find somebody. The hunting community is awesome, where you can get on Facebook, you can get on whatever state you're in's likely got a hunting Facebook page, Instagram. Get out in the community, talk with people. They're going to be willing to take you out, because you can't get better experience than firsthand experience from somebody who's knowledgeable, taking you out and just showing you the basics, what a scrape is, what a rub is, what that means. But don't be afraid to make mistakes, and get a camera, put a camera up. It's really fun. It helps you learn about deer. If you can't find a trail or a rub or a scrape, find deer droppings and just put a camera up on a pile of deer droppings. The deer's been by there before. Put that camera up and check it in a couple of weeks. And if you've got a lot of action there, then maybe you're in a pretty decent spot and you can start to learn more about it.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key, is and the other thing I'd add to that is just be patient, because it's not always what meets the eye either, especially if you've got natural pinpoints, or if you do find some droppings. Just be patient. Deer are pretty routine. They might not come back to that exact same spot, but they'll come back to that area. So you just got to keep checking for sign and keep looking, and give yourself that best opportunity. They say that the more you're in the field and the more you can kind of, for lack of a better term, live with the deer, which hence the evolution of game cameras, you can start to figure out what their behaviors are and when's the right time to hunt, and so on and so forth. So if you got questions, reach out into the community, because there's always somebody willing to help, especially when it comes to introducing new people or just educating people. It's really just a very passionate, very loyal community, and we're all willing to help out a fellow hunter at any point in time. So thanks for sharing that, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I get emails every week, multiple emails from listeners. A lot of new hunters like to listen to my podcast. I kind of, not that I dumb it down, but I like to go back to the basics, even with the most experienced hunters that I'm interviewing that might be legends up here and have killed, 30 Pope and Young bucks, or in the Northeast, weight is a big thing. People love a 200-pound buck as opposed to racks. You got a whole contingency that only wants to shoot a 200-pound buck and big heavy weighted bucks. And if I'm talking to one of those guys who is a legend, the new hunters can gain a lot of insight from those guys, just as an experienced hunter like yourself can gain a lot of new knowledge and find entertainment in the stories that they're telling and talking about. So
absolutely. And to your point, hunting up where you are in the Northeast, it's really similar to hunting out west. For those of you guys that hunt mule deer, or are thinking about maybe hunting mule deer. I personally lived out in Arizona for about 8 years, and had the opportunity every year to go chase after some mule deer. And I can tell you, if you think you're going to pattern a mule deer that's just got wide open space, you're wrong. It is it's one of the most challenging hunts, because boy, they can get up and down a mountain pretty quick. And it truly is a spot and stalk. And I tell everyone that, there's the spotting part, but the stalking part is totally different, because everything pokes, prods, rips, tears, and there is no such thing as being quiet and sneaking up on a deer out there, even if you think you're going to take your boots off and walk up to it in your socks. I've seen a lot of guys try that. I tried it once. I don't really see the point in trying to do that anymore. It truly becomes a game of using the terrain to your advantage to minimize your noise, and it brings its whole set of challenges. But it's very similar. You just can't pattern them out there. You just got to kind of know the general areas and catch them at first light, or before dark, and hope that they're there the next day. So very similar in that regard. You up in the Northeast have your whole set of challenges. You guys probably got some pretty thick forest up there.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of long shots. You're not doing spot and stock very often. If you are, it's on a micro scale compared to out west. I killed a buck on the ground last year. It was just kind of by chance spot and stock. I knew of a bedding area. It was a rainy, windy day, I love rainy and windy days. Are my favorite days to hunt without snow. If it's bare ground, rain and wind is awesome for still hunting and creeping around. And I find that deer move a lot in the rain and wind. Even though some people say that they don't, they definitely do, and mature bucks do. And so I had this bedding area that I had marked down in Onyx the year before. I'd only been through there once, but I like to. This ties into another thing. It was in February. Whenever you can, if you have snow, take advantage of it. Even in the postseason, go out in the snow and follow tracks. Find the biggest game trails, mark all that stuff down on your GPS, mark down the bedding areas. Well, this was a particular bedding area that I marked down that had, 8 doe beds, and then 40, 50 yards away had a couple of buck beds. And I knew it was a buck bed because, there's different ways to tell. They're bigger beds, but the sure way to tell it's a buck bed is you see what their urine's doing. So a buck, and you might know this, but for listeners who don't, a buck when they're walking is going to dribble urine. So they'll pee a little bit, but then as they're walking along, they're going to continue peeing. They don't care. They're savages. Then they're peeing, and their thing's swinging and it dribbles. So a doe will pee in a nice clean little circle in the snow. That's it. They don't have any dribble. So finding these beds and following their tracks out of it and confirming, okay, there's a lot of dribble going on. It's a big track, nice stagger to it. This is a buck bed. So a couple of things out of that. You got bucks that bed in generally the same locations as does sometimes, but it's only 40, 50 yards away. They bed in different, there was something different about it. It was a little bit thicker. They had a big blowdown that they could get behind. They're just a little more particular about where they bed because they are not used to bedding with the herd. The does can all bed in a more open spot because they have, depending on the size of the group, they've got more eyeballs. They got 10 or 20 eyeballs looking for predators. Bucks are solitary. And they need to be in a more concealed location. So I just had marked that down in Onyx, and it was a place that wouldn't be super huntable based on the prevailing winds up here, coming from the northwest most of the time. But there was a particular day, it was rainy, windy. I had hunted somewhere else in the morning and wanted to switch it up midday and do some creeping, and I wanted to creep into a bedding area. Pulled up Onyx. I remembered this whole scenario from scouting in February the year before and said, I'm going to go check this out, just creep in there. And I know where they bed. It's not too far from where I park. So I'm just going to take my time, get in there and check it out. Well, I got lucky because I took my time. It's all recorded too, and it's on my YouTube page. It's a pretty awesome footage. I have it attached to my bow. My phone, and just recording, and came in really well. I creep into this bedding area, taking my time, like death creep. You got to go extremely slow. If you know where they're bedding, go extremely slow. Well, I went in, sat down on a rock for about 25 seconds, and I see that a buck he had the same idea I was, and he came in there scent checking that bedding area. I know it was a doe bedding area. Also, there were some bucks that bedded there, but there were eight or so doe beds in February. He came in scent checking it. It was November, I think 22nd. And he was walking right at me, big mature 8-pointer. And he didn't give me any shots walking straight at me. I'm not going to take a shot straight on. So I just stayed still. He turned to his right, got behind a giant boulder. I had to get up from the rock that I was on and hop a couple boulders to get to a spot where there would be an opening in a shooting lane. And I did that, and he stepped right into it, just gave me a perfect shot at like 20 yards. And that was awesome. I mean, that's kind of the closest you get to spot and stock in the Northeast. Yeah. But I'm going to North Dakota this year for the first time. So I'm going to actually get the real spot in.
Yeah. You'll get to hunt some of the prairie, some of the flatlands up there. It gets pretty flat up that way. And
Have you hunted there?
I have not personally hunted there. I have some friends that live there, and every year it seems like they kill a big buck, and I keep asking for an invite. So I think they just want to keep their hunting area to themselves. I give them a hard time all the time, like, wait, I'll just be an extra set of eyes. I don't care. But I've been up there. I have visited up there, and I'll tell you, it's some of the most beautiful country up there. Of anywhere in the country. When you really look at some of that tall grass and some of that stuff where them bucks like to hide, it seems like a lot of times all you can see is it's just a rack kind of sticking up, and then that's how you hunt them up there. It's very interesting, and I'm very intrigued, and it's definitely on my list of one of those places to get to. One of the places I have been fortunate enough to get to, which a lot of guys always are it's one of their bucket list places, but I've had a chance to get up and hunt in Alaska. And I will tell you, from a spot and stock standpoint, it's the same thing, man. It's so thick. If you can get a 10 or a 15-yard shot in a lot of places up there, it's pretty wild. For me, it was bear hunting. And I also had I also had a deer tag in my pocket, and I was with a couple buddies, and wasn't fortunate enough to take a deer. We were able to find them. But we weren't able to get in close enough for a shot because they're just very difficult, and they're a little bit smaller deer, so they're blacktail, right? So they're pretty nimble, and a lot of guys go up into the alpine. The time of year we were out there was in September, so they weren't really some of them were up in the alpine. We chose to hunt some of the lower elevation stuff just for fun and to get in to see if we could do it and make it more of a challenge in the thick stuff. And we were bow hunting. So it's like, all right, we could go up into the alpine and try to get in on one. But, again, sneaking up on one with a bow and arrow is pretty tough. A lot of guys just go with a rifle. So we're like, you know what, let's stick to some of the lower areas and see what we can come up with and see if we can get lucky. And we saw more bears up close and personal than I'd care to admit, just walking along some of the trails, because everything grows so fast and it gets so overgrown. Even the trails, you gotta walk with one hand out, or one of your walking sticks out in front of you, because otherwise you're just getting leaves and alders just smacking you in the face all the time. So, but it's quite an experience. If anyone ever gets the opportunity to go, we weren't fortunate enough to kill one. But my buddy had a bear tag, and he was fortunate enough to take a bear. So it was
awesome.
Pretty cool.
Black bear?
Yeah, because his first one ever, and it was the second biggest one. We were on Prince of Wales Island, and I forget the exact measurements, but it was the second biggest bear killed on the island that year. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, "Oh, that's not a big bear." And me and our other buddy are like, "You have no idea how big that bear is. Like, look at the melon on that thing." And we went in, and they score it right away, part of the state. And it was the second biggest bear. And she's like, there's not going to be another one bigger than this. He's like, I'm surprised that we have had two of them this size come through.
Wow.
He's like, congratulations. So I'm like, good for you. I'm like, he shot, it was a Boone and Crockett. It scored big enough to be a Boone and Crockett bear.
Look at that, dude.
Yeah,
wow.
I was like, wow, what are the odds of that, man? How cool.
How much to weigh? Do you know? Do you guys weigh it?
I don't know. We didn't get a chance to weigh it. And, like I said, it was, again, it's more up there. It becomes more about other bears and wolves at that point. So it's pretty much clean everything up, get in and get out as quickly as possible kind of thing. And when you're,
I've seen Grizzly Man, dude. Like that documentary. Have you ever seen that? One of my favorite documentaries. That guy was a riot. But yeah, I've seen that enough to know you don't want to stick around too long.
Not too long. And thankfully there were three of us. So one guy, could skin and do some cutting, and the other two guys are there with flashlights back to back and just kind of panning the whole time. And yeah, it was quite the experience. It's like, okay, we got a bear down. Now what? The real work really does start at that point when you're in the middle of nowhere, and your closest call for help is going to be Coast Guard. So, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. I really would, and I would recommend it to anyone if you get a chance to go to Alaska, or really anywhere, even up in the Northeast where you are. I'd like to get up there because it presents it's a new, unique challenge to hunting. And I think that's really what I live for is, what can we do to, again, experience something new. And it's the same with duck hunting, right? There's different areas of the country, ducks behave differently, and they group up differently. And you can get its own separate set of challenges as well. So I encourage anyone, just go do it. If it's on your bucket list, just go do it. It's a lot more affordable than most people think. The expense of your travel is usually the most expensive part, even if you got to hire a hunting guide. But I'm a big DIY guy, so I like to research and just do things on my own. I think most bow hunting, anybody that bow hunts, I think a lot of guys that are bow hunter are more just DIY and don't really necessarily want to hire a guide. I'd rather just try to figure it out and, talk to some local people and meet local people and, try to make it happen on my own. There's just more of a sense of accomplishment, I guess, for me personally, that I take some amount of pride in to say, yeah, I did that, and I did it without hiring a guide.
Yeah. Well, that's, and in the Northeast, like if you're looking for a different challenge, it's definitely what's totally different up here is that culture of tracking down a buck, waiting for fresh snow, getting on their track and following it. The cool part about that is, it takes the guesswork out of it. There's a big buck on the end of that track. All you have to do is catch up to it, so that's super unique. And then the Western hunt, that North Dakota hunt, that's DIY. Can't wait for that, man.
Yeah. Whereabouts are you going? Is it the central part of the state, southern part?
I've been so busy with everything. I haven't looked at it too much. Yeah, it's like 4 hours west of Bismarck, something like that.
Okay.
We're flying into Bismarck. My buddy booked the whole place. He has all the details. It is on a private cattle ranch, but the ranch is 10,000 acres, and it abuts all this national land. You got river, as for whitetail, you need the riverbeds there.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that going through it. So yeah, and it's basically, we just got a cabin. The rancher will say, oh, we picked up some sheds over here, over there, point us in the right direction, and we're on our own.
That's awesome. Good for you. I love those DIY hunts, man. There's just a certain amount of satisfaction that goes with it. So, and I think for those of you that are listening, that are maybe thinking about it, I would say to you, don't be scared. There's enough resources online. You can look at the terrain. You can look at elevation changes, and you can start to find natural pinch points, and you can start to get a lay of the land and start to figure out where food and water is going to be, and just go try it. Especially those of you that are on a budget, I definitely think it's worthwhile. And again, like I said, me personally, it's more about the satisfaction of saying, yeah, I did that, and I did it on my own with minimal help and didn't have to hire a guide. It sure saves a ton of money on hiring a guide. On the flip side, you can always hire a guide. You can always try to get a feel for it and see if you want to do it on your own. Some states, depending on where you go, they require a guide. I know Alaska, if you go to Alaska, most of the state does require a guide. So unfortunately, you have to hire a guide, but just do some research and try it, and go try something new. I think that's the core of the message here, is be willing to go try something new. And most of us as hunters, we are, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's the best part about hunting, is you could live your whole life and never try every way and type of hunting there is. There's even just within deer hunting, and I'm sure it's the same with duck hunting, but just within deer hunting, you've got you can hunt rifle, you can hunt muzzleloader, you can hunt bow, you can hunt crossbow, you can go from compound bow into recurve, and then creating your own arrows and arrowheads and making your own bows. And there's just so many levels to it. So getting out and trying something new while you're young too. Like everybody says, just don't wait. If you want to go do a Western hunt, don't wait. If you want to go to Alaska, don't wait. And there's so much to that. You really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Get out there while you're young, do something new, and it might open a new door for you.
There you go. Well said. Now, Pat, I know you're also doing speaking of something new, you have something new that you're working on this year. It's the first ever, and it's called Huntstock. So tell us a little bit about Huntstock and how people can get involved.
Yeah, man. Huntstock is my vision for it is to be the Woodstock of the hunting world. So people coming from all over the Northeast. I mean, I do have some people coming up from Alabama, Florida, and flying in from different places. So there is a little bit of that, but it's going to be definitely this year. The first year it's in Massachusetts. It's going to be a lot of Northeastern hunters. congregating at a farm. One of my listeners of the podcast, owner of Wildwood Farm, he reached out. He's like, "Hey, I heard you talking about wanting to do an event. Let's, come check out my farm and let's see if it works out." Farm was an awesome place. They're just awesome people. And yeah, basically it's like, it's a bunch of podcasts, a bunch of YouTube creators, a bunch of anybody who's in the outdoor community who creates content and is in that world. They're all coming. I've got 8 podcasters and 20 YouTube pages from the Northeast, all coming, setting up a booth. They'll be able to, meet fans, participate in seminars. If they have a podcast, they'll be doing live podcasts from our stage, so kind of build it like a concert. We'll have 2 or 3 podcasts on stage back to back to back, with openers and then the headliners. And, you might have 3 or 4 seminars from some of the well-known YouTubers or hunting celebrities, quote unquote, that we've gotten in the Northeast on that main stage. It's 12 hours of entertainment on the stage, all 3 days. We'll probably have 2 stages, another one outside, because we've got, we're already filled up pretty much on the schedule. And then in addition to all that, it's like we're going to have thousands of everyday hunters that just want to learn from the more experienced guys that want to come and network, that want to shoot the shit, that want to relax for the entire weekend. We're encouraging people to bring their own tents, pop-up tents and lawn chairs so that they get there early and pop up a base camp for themselves all day and stay all day and experience everything that's going on. We've got 25 sponsors already coming with booths, and everything is experiential. So I'm telling all the sponsors, all the exhibitors, they've got to be doing something that adds to the experience of Huntstock. Come up with something unique, teach a workshop, demonstrate products, have live hands-on demonstrations, and do giveaways and just give back to the hunting community. So nothing against window salesmen and insurance salesmen and stuff, but the things that you see at the typical hunting show these days, we're not going to have any of that there. It's going to be all hunting industry related. It's going to be a bunch of people coming together, having a good time, celebrating our hunting culture. And we're giving away $15,000 in door prizes there from, First Light Camo. We got 3 kits from First Light donated. We've got 4 brand new bows, a PSE Hoyt and Matthews bow, and Elite Archery bow. We've got a bunch of accessories we're giving away, Onyx subscriptions, Yokohama tire sets for your trucks. We've got original artwork by famous wildlife artists we're giving away. We're just giving away a ton of stuff so everybody who buys a ticket, you get entered into the door prizes. And then we've got a 3D archery course there too, that it's 20 targets. We got a front 10 and a back 10. It's kind of scored like golf and laid out like a golf course with the front 10 and the back 10, and just something a little unique there too. So people are going to be bringing their bows, shooting the course, taking in all they can. And I like to think that it's like you're soaking in like 10 to 20 different books worth of knowledge just by coming for one weekend, and you're going to have a great time doing it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a heck of an experience. So I'm going to have to check my schedule and see if I can make it out. Sounds really cool.
We would love to have you guys up there.
Yeah, we'll have to have a convo about that and see what that looks like. And what I can say to anyone else that's listening, if you're watching this, go out to easiest way to get to it. I think it's through Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/Hunt Suburbia, that's Hunt Suburbia, you'll see a link right over to the Eventbrite where you can go out and purchase your tickets. Go out there and click that link and make a purchase and go out there, especially if you're in the Northeast or you're within a reasonable driving distance. Even if you're not, I think it's going to be an awesome event. It sounds awesome from what I can tell. Even though I know we just met, but I'm looking at some of the sponsors that you guys have already, and it's really going to be a well put together event. I can tell that event marketing experience from Spartan is paying off. So
yeah.
Pretty exciting stuff. So
one thing I want to say too is like for duck hunters, and definitely Huntstock is going to be heavily weighted to deer hunting, but we have we have some good duck hunters coming. We have, but you guys being there, if you have Duck Hunting Fanatics up there, would be a great addition, because we're going to have some trappers and fur bearers there, hopefully, and we want every kind of niche within the hunting world to eventually be represented at Huntstock. This first year, I'm sure we're gonna miss some of those niches, but that's why we'd love to have you guys there representing duck hunting. But have you guys heard of? Do you watch Just Hunt Club at all on YouTube?
I have not.
They make incredible duck hunting content, and they are heavily tied in with the hunting public. They're friends with the hunting public. They all kind of work back at Midwest Whitetail back in the days, so they have that similar origin story to the hunting public, and they put out content just like they do, but it's heavily geared towards the Northeast. And their owner, co-founder, John Lewis, is a really great duck hunter and waterfowl hunter, and he puts out awesome content, and they're one of the biggest draws for Huntstock. They'll all be there. So in the duck hunting world, that's a great tie-in there, and you guys should definitely check them out if you haven't.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, so that's Just Hunt Club, and it's John Lewis, so definitely check him out too. And again, I want to thank you, Pat, for being here and for sharing all this with us and for putting together Huntstock. I mean, it's off to a very quick start here. I know it's the first year doing it, but I can see this growing year over year, and we're happy to share that with our friends, fans, and fellow duck hunters. So thanks again for sharing, and thanks again for being here.
Oh, absolutely, man. Appreciate it. And, in the future, the vision for Huntstock too is to be able to camp on site so people can drive from far away, with RVs and not have to find a local campgrounds. Right now, most people are going to be finding a campground or an RV spot to post up. But in the future, I want that all to be in the same location. So, big vision. Back to that whole product thing and idea thing. If you have an idea, just do it. Don't be afraid to fail. If it fails, you're going to learn from it. And I would always encourage you to think down the road too. Think about what you got to do today, but envision it. If you can't envision it being around in 5 years or 10 years from now, then you probably shouldn't even start it. But I'm seeing Huntstock 5 years down the road, and just being a huge event that represents every corner of the hunting industry that people drive for hundreds or even thousands of miles to come to and set up a camp for a weekend. So that's the overall goal. This year it'll be a little bit different. There's no on-site camping, but it's going to be a hell of a time.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, yeah, even duck hunter, I'm sure there's a lot of deer hunters that are also duck hunters. So make sure you check out the event, and make sure you check out Pat's podcast here too. Those of you that are watching, it's just the Hunt Suburbia podcast. Again, the Hunt Suburbia podcast. Check out Pat and engage with him. He does a lot of interviews. He's very consistent with his podcast, a little more consistent than we are here at Duck Hunting Fanatics. We're in process of changing that, where we've got new content coming out every week now. But we want to thank you guys for tuning in today and for listening. Again, without you guys, we wouldn't be able to continue to do this. So we appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. Hopefully you found some good value about deer hunting today, especially from Pat and his experience, and especially for those of you that are up in the Northeast that maybe hunt the Northeast, or those of you that are thinking about hunting the Northeast. Gives you kind of an idea of what to expect. So Pat, once again, I want to thank you one last time for being here, man. I appreciate that. We appreciate you being on the show today.
No problem. Anybody want to send me an email? It's huntsuburbia@gmail.com with any questions about anything. Always answering that. And follow me on Instagram at Hunt Suburbia. And he's already showed you the Facebook page and all the other ways. But it's been a pleasure, man. Hopefully we could talk about having you up to Huntstock and go from there, buddy.
Absolutely. You got it. All right, my friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode of Knee Deep in the Duck Blind.
We are Duck Hunting Fanatics. Knee deep in the duck blind. If it flies, it dies.